Hey, YouTubers, how we doing? Um, this is kind of the second video I'm making in this sort of playlist about sort of grief and the journey that we go on when we lose people. Yesterday I did my first one, and that was just sort of off the cuff and from my phone. And we had a guest appearance from my cat buddy, and I can't guarantee that he or another one of my cats is going to jump in here again. Today, I wanted to do things a little bit differently, be a little more techy. As we go on, I might make these a little bit more like a TV show. We don't know. I don't know how long I'm going to do this. I don't know how often I'm going to do this. I thought about doing 365 days, but I can't guarantee I'm going to be on every single day. Um, I don't know. This is just sort of as we go through it. So one thing I did realize is when I did my video yesterday that 8 views. Yay. And but believe me, that's not why I'm doing it. If I get one view and what that one view is a person that comes and says, I listened to what you had to say and it really helped, or I felt this, or I felt this connection, or I thought, yeah, you did that was helpful for me. That really I didn't agree. That's fine. That's what I want to do. I'd love to create a little sharing community here with this that people could even comment afterward and say, yeah, I'm not doing this to get sympathy and pity. Um, I'm trying to work through this. And I think this is one way to do it. And again, like I said yesterday, if people are out there. I'm sure there's loads of people out there that way we've all suffered grief at one time or another, unless you're really, really young or really, really lucky. But, if you don't have that outlet, you just know that, hey, you're not alone. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are some of the cliches, maybe, or things that are put out there, but they're not for everybody anyway. But one thing I realized was that unless you follow me on Facebook or you're a friend of mine personally or a family member, you don't know the story of what happened. Okay, so I'm going to tell that and I'm going to do my best. I got through it without bawling my eyes out. But basically, on February 14th of this year, which is 5 weeks ago, I got a phone call in the middle of the night. It was technically the 15th for me because I live in England and my family live in the United States. This is where I'm from originally. The phone goes off. I've got my phone on my bed next to me because it's also my alarm. And I see a number that I don't recognize. It's a US number, but we have it, we call area codes in the United States, then the 7-digit phone number. I'm like, well, I don't know that number. So I just delete it. Literally 30 seconds later, that same number calls back. And I'm like, what? I do a lot of work online, so these kinds of things happen. You get these little crank calls. So I decline it again. And I thought, if this person phones back, I'm literally going to pick it up and say, hey, can you just fuck off? It's the middle of the night here. I'm not interested. Leave me alone. Well, instead of the phone going off again, all of a sudden I hear that ping from Facebook, the meaning from Messenger, and it's my brother. And my brother's like, you need to pick up the phone. So I'm like, all right. First of all, why are you calling me on an Illinois phone number? And second of all, what's going on? So I knew something was up. So I probably figured it's probably something to do with one of my parents because they are, or were getting elderly, but they were still reasonably good health and pretty active. So anyway, I pick up the phone. They call again. I pick up the phone, and it's just really difficult to hear anything. And I just hear my brother go, Mom and Dad. And I'm like, what? What happened? And he's like, Mom and Dad, Mom and Dad. And then I hear Mom and Dad gone. And I'm like, and I realize that they're driving. And I'm like, whoa, where are you going? What's going on? And then he finally says, Mom and Dad have died. And I'm like, what? And I actually started getting quite cross with him. And I said, what are you doing calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, my time? Do you realize what time it is? And then I've got to get up and go to work. No, I didn't have to get up and go to work because it was a Saturday. But I still had to get up and do some things. I've got to get up in the morning and go feed the chickens. Da, 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 da. And what are you doing calling me with this news? Stop it. This is not funny. And then he's like, no, no, I'm telling you the truth. And then he gives the phone over to his wife, and she's like, Gretchen. And I'm like, yes. And she's like, it's Stephanie. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And she said, can you hear me okay now? And I said, yeah, I can hear you a lot better. Because he must have had the window open or something. Um, and he's like, it's happened. They've been in a car accident. They have died. Buddy was with them. Buddy's the dog. And she's like, this is my phone. So that's why you're seeing an Illinois area code because she's from there. And I'm like, what? And she was obviously just processing it herself. And she says, they've died. They've all gone together. We're on our way to the house, meaning their house. We're going to meet the sheriff, and then we'll have more news for you. And then I just heard my brother say from the driver's seat, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, no, no. Okay, I didn't say that to them. So they hung up and they said, look, we've got to go. We're just about there. So we're going to meet the sheriff and we'll have hopefully some more news for you. And I said, have the sheriff call me. And they said, okay. I said, if they can, because it's an English number and they can't always call overseas. Well, anyway, I was like, what? No, I'm going to call my dad right now. And he's going to pick up the phone and I'm going to tell him, you need to sort your son out. You need to sit him down and have a serious talk. What is he doing calling people at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me that you're dead? Well, I'm very glad I didn't do that because if I would have called my dad's number, I would have gotten the sheriff and he would have probably said, ma'am, I'm sorry. This has happened. I ended up having to do that anyway, not calling my dad, but I wanted the sheriff to call me, like I told my brother and my sister-in-law. And they got to the house. Basically, my brother had sent me a picture of the deputy's card with his number. And he says, the deputy says to call him. So I was like, okay. So anyway, and then his wife got onto Facebook Messenger and said, we've got A, B, and C out of the house. We're going to go back. We're going to lock everything up. We haven't seen your mom's cat, but we've left food out for him. So I was like, oh God, yeah, that poor thing, 'cause he's skittish as hell. And then they went home. So I got out of bed. It's now getting close to 4 in the morning. I picked up the phone and just looked at the number, the sheriff's number, and I just thought, once you call this and get the official word, that's it. You know they've gone. So I thought they're going, if I don't call them, does that mean it hasn't happened? Finally, I realized that was stupid. And I called the sheriff and I was like, hello, my name's Gretchen Ivy. Obviously, I have just been told about the accident involving my parents. And he told me the story. He just said, yes. He was very quick because they're very busy. And he said, they were struck at high speed, basically T-bone. So they were stationary and the car piled into them. He said that if it's any comfort to you at all, they were killed instantly, probably within seconds. And I'm like, I suppose, when nobody wants to think of anybody suffering. They said car was hit, flipped several times. It was still daylight out because at the time of the day it happened, it was Valentine's Day. They'd probably gone out for dinner and were on their way home. They were hit. And there was somebody in a house nearby that heard the crash. So they called the ambulance. The ambulance was there within 4 seconds, and by the time they arrived, they had all gone. Mom, dad, and the dog. So anyway, I was like, okay, what do we do? And he's like, what do you mean, ma'am? And I said, I don't know what to do next. Belongings. How do we get the belongings out of the car? And he said, okay, well, person you need to contact is the state medical examiner. And I was like, oh God, Quincy. And I was like, okay. And he says, this is her personal cell number. You don't need to worry about calling her. She's fine. She's probably expecting you to. And she will tell you the first sort of steps you need to take in terms of getting things out of the car you want, um, the legal side of stuff. My brother wasn't answering. He'd probably gone to bed because it was actually now starting to get quite late for them and quite early for me, but my sister-in-law was still online. So I said, okay, I'm going to call the state medical examiner. I called her, really lovely person, really sweet and really kind. And she said, I'm so very sorry about what happened. And she says, I know you might have a lot of questions or you have no questions, but what can I do for you? And I just said, what do we do? I'm in England. I can't do anything today, but what's step one in this process? And she said, good question. You need to get their social security numbers, which is, if any, those of you that might be watching me in England, that's like the equivalent of our national insurance numbers. And she said, that's what you need first. We're going to take everything we can out of the car, that, is salvageable. And if they're, we want to look for their cell phones, their wallets, anything, any kind of information like that, that might have that on it, because that's what basically, if you're going to have a funeral, they need that. The county needs that for the death certificates. And that word death certificate just struck me cold. It was just like, ah. And yeah, basically, you go from there. She says, there's going to be a postmortem. It was a holiday weekend because that Monday was President's Day. So she said it's very unlikely that that's going to happen before Tuesday. They might be able to rush it. And I just said, a postmortem. Why? It's fairly obvious what killed him. And she said, that's the law of the state. Whenever there's a road traffic accident where there's a fatality, we have to do a postmortem. So I said, well, okay, I'm not going to stand in the way of that on any kind of religious grounds or anything. That's the law. That's the law. Um, I kind of look at it as, I want to know. I've never really understood people with religious afflictions, and even in murder cases. And they're like, well, we don't want that. And I'm like, don't you want to know? And if this helps catch who did it, don't you want that? Anyway, that's another topic for another video. So I got all that written down. Um, and I just said, basically, tell me straight. Are we looking at a closed casket funeral here? And she said, well, only if you really want to, you could do an open casket. Um, there's not really facial damage, and anything else would be covered by clothing. So that is an option for you. Um, but she says, and I said, I'm not going to make that decision now. I need to talk about this with my brother. We ended up not doing that. We ended up doing cremation, which I thought was the good move. Um, and she said, I'm really sorry. Again, she says, I will confirm what the sheriff said, that they wouldn't have known what hit him. It would have been that fast. So I was like, well, okay. I suppose that is something, but I still couldn't take it in. It was just like, what? If I pick up the phone and call my dad's number, I expect he's going to pick it up and answer and say, hello, hey, this was all a joke. I'm like, not funny. But anyway, I got into my sister-in-law and I told her this is what we need to do. The postmortem's probably not going to be until Tuesday. So we've got time to find these things and get the ball rolling. So my sister-in-law said, well, your brother's gone to bed. He's struggling to process this. My brother had a stroke a year ago. And thinking wise and everything, he's fine, but again, struggles to process stuff. So she says, this is a good start. Yeah, so that was the story. We lost both of them instantly. I had only talked to my dad maybe the day before. My brother had talked to him on the day, and it was just like, what? My mom was 79. My dad was 82. Yeah, they were elderly. Yeah, we were probably thinking within the next few years we might be doing this with one of them in sort of an expected circumstance, a heart attack, or my mom had COPD, but she was coping with it really well. Um, something related to that, which is sad enough. Like I said in my video yesterday, I would never say that there's an easy way. Every way when you deal with a family death like that is its own form of horrible. Um, Terminal illness, even expected illness, that's draining as hell. This is just the shock. Here 1 minute, they're gone the next, just kaboom. That's it. So, yeah, that's the story. From there, I had to start making arrangements to go home to help. My brother's like, I can't do this on my own. And I said, of course not. You're not going to have to, but I can't come like tomorrow. I have my birds and I have things here that I need to arrange. And then I will book a flight. I did book a flight that day, not for that day, but for the Thursday. And he says, no, no, of course, right. My brother and I get along pretty well. So it's not like, fighting siblings going, Anyway, that's the story of what happened. One thing that I wanted to do is also talk about what I want to do with this and what I don't want to do with this. I've kind of already touched on that. What I don't want to do is sound like some kind of an expert on grief and how, well, in a way I am because I'm going through it, but how to deal with it. I'm not going to tell you if you're going through a similar thing to me right now, what you should do, A, B, and C. No, because that's not how it works. I'm going to go into a grief cliche here. Everybody's different. Everybody grieves differently. Everybody takes in these things differently. And some people seem like they're doing great on the outside when they are just in absolute turmoil, Armageddon on the inside. So, yeah, so I'm not going to stand here and say, well, I went through this and this is how how I did it, and this is how maybe you should do it. No, I'm going to say, this is how I did it. And if you can benefit from it, great, but you have to find your way. Okay. So that's what I don't want to do. What I do want to do is share my experience with other people, what I did go through, um, and just hope that maybe it helps people. Um, Give this a place to talk and listen and but I'm not going to sit here and say you should do that because who am I to say that? I'm me, you're you. One thing that really pees me off is when people say, "Oh yeah, I went through this and I did this and I went to work the very next day and I just got on with it." Well, yeah, you know what? Bully for you. Good for you. You know what? And if that's what you felt you needed to do, then great. But not everybody's you. All right. So shut up. The other thing I want to do is talk about like what happened today, where I am today. Um, because today was not a good day. And this kind of ties into the five stages of grief. I can't even name what they are anymore because I know some places it's five, some places it's seven, some put some in some order, but there's basically like, denial, um, anger, sadness. Finally, there's these, all kinds of little different ones until you get to this thing called acceptance. And I'm like, acceptance, what the hell is that? Okay, I accept it's happened. I understand that it's happened. I understand my life is not going to be the same from now, but does that mean that I'm at some sort of epiphany, that I should be feeling better? No. What makes me mad is like this whole stage thing, like you go through it like a grocery list. You don't. And sometimes you go through these stages and maybe you flip back or you go through them in the wrong order. Yeah, there are areas of it that I agree with. There is the denial phase. Like I was in the denial phase, like, holy shit, what? No, come on. That didn't happen. This is just a bad dream. You're playing a really nasty joke, and the next time I see you, brother boy, I'm going to slap the shit out of you, kind of thing. That's why I was feeling. And it wasn't until I heard a different voice that just snapped and thought, oh God, this has happened. And then when I got to that believing it happened, I still couldn't internalize it. Like, what do I do? That was the next thing. My brother was saying, what do we do? What's step one? I don't know. I haven't lost it. We have the same set of parents. I have not been around them, done this before as well. So my brother was one of the things he was saying, what do we do? I don't know what to do. And I'm like, and I do, just because I'm older? No. We have to figure this out together. And we have been. So that's one thing. I think that really misleads people when they start to recognize those different stages and maybe they're going through them, that they're getting to some kind of finishing line, and that isn't it. Um, I said in my video yesterday that I'm autistic. Um, and autistic people look for that. They look for that. Oh, one, two, three, four, boom. Hey, I'm feeling better. I'm through it now. Boom. No, you find that this is in waves. Some days are going to be good. Some days are going to be shit. Um, I think what I'm finding is that maybe 5 out of 7 days are shit right now. Two are kind of okay. Um, I got back to England last Friday and I had signed up, I think I mentioned this in yesterday's video. I signed up for a martial arts seminar long before this happened. And it just so happened that it coincided with the week I was coming back. So I'd completely forgotten about it until about 2 weeks before I was ready to come home. I thought, oh God, yeah, that's the same week. Well, I can do it if I'm up to it. I went to it and I had a really good time and I was glad I did it. And in a way, it was a bit helpful. So I thought, but I fooled myself into thinking, you got this. You're doing well. You're going to be able to go back to your training and do your physical activity, and that's going to help you. Monday, I was so drained I couldn't do 10 minutes on the bike. Tuesday, I was couldn't even go. I wanted to just go for a walk. I was just like, I can't go. I can't do it. And I think I mentioned how I talked to my kickboxing instructor who's lost his wife a couple of years ago. And he said, if you're tired, go to bed. Don't force it. Do not force it because you're not going to do yourself any favors. You're just going to make things worse for yourself. Do what you can manage. So Wednesday was a little bit better. Wednesday, I got on the bike and I did 20 minutes and actually started organizing some things and thought, okay, all right, we're getting there. Thursday, tired as hell. Went out to the allotment, um, and did my thing with my birds. And I thought, okay, this is good. This is where I clear my head. And then got to today, and last night I started feeling really physically bad. I was cold all the time, shivering. I thought either I'm coming down with the cold or this is related to the stress. The funny thing that happened was I actually had a conversation with ChatGPT, not as a therapist, but just saying, is this normal? And yeah, and I think it's fine to do that. It's fine to use AI as long as you realize you're talking to AI and not a human being. Um, and it did say that, yeah, your energy is all going to the stress. You're just your stress levels are out of control at the minute. Your brain is still trying to process this, and this was confirmed by a GP today. So I'm not just relying on AI. So of course you're going to be feeling physical symptoms. That is not, this is medically backed up. Well, anyway, today I thought, okay, it did say maybe you should talk to a GP first and then go from there. So I thought, all right, well, it can't hurt. My medical practice. Ooh. Phoned in. This is a problem kind of England-wide with just the lack of, I understand that the NHS is on its face, as our lovely Prime Minister loves to say, because his wife used to be a nurse, as he loves to drive home like he knows what he's talking about. And there's, not the funding needed to be joined by a cat. Um, but the thing is, there's no excuse for treating people the way I was treated. I phoned in, and the problem is when you phone in when the practice opens, it's busy, or by the time you get in, all the appointments have gone. And okay, I was prepared for that, saying, okay, you may not get an appointment today. That's fine. Or something. I said, I'm happy with a callback appointment because really a GP is not really going to do much for you unless you've got like shortness of breath or really, really profound physical symptoms. And then they're probably just going to stick you in the hospital. Okay. But the thing is, this woman wasn't giving me anything like that. She says, okay, well, I can send you the link via phone. And then you can try to get a triage appointment. And I said, I'm happy to do that. But the thing is, when this is Popper anyway, I'm happy to do that. But the problem is when you send it to me by phone, I can never get it to work. And she's like, well, there's nothing I can do. I've done everything I can do for you. Really snotty cow. And I could feel myself just the sadness and the crying. And I said, look, lady, 5 weeks ago, I lost both my parents and my family dog, okay, in a car accident. And I'm having physical symptoms. Now, I'm not trying to jump the queue and say that my problems are more important than anyone else's. But the thing is, I expect a little bit more from you. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I'm like, can you email that to me? I can probably get it to work on the email. No, we don't do email. We just went back and forth. I did manage to get like an appointment with a mental health practitioner for Monday, but I was furious. I just, I'm saying thank you. Um, and and I very nearly did. I phoned back again, told the next receptionist, I'm really not happy with this. I think the way you are handling the situation is horrible. Um, and she wasn't any better. She was like, well, I don't understand what you want us to do. There's no appointments. This is what we do. And if you can't work with that, basically tough. And anyway, I went around to 111, which is like a non-emergency call. He was really lovely. I had to go through the whole questions that didn't have anything to do with my thing, but they have to ask them legally. And I said, all right. And he says, well, look, I will put through a call back for you from a GP. And I thought, well, why couldn't they have done that? And he says, I'll be honest with you, I really don't know. But anyway, I can do that for you. And the GP called me, and she was lovely. She was absolutely lovely. And she also headed up the complaints. And she said, and she goes, what can I do for you? And I said, well, first of all, you can have a word with your receptionist because they were absolutely bloody awful to me earlier. And she's like, yes, I understand. And management is going to deal with that. And I didn't really feel a lot of comfort with that. I thought, um, because I've worked in management before. I was a middle leader at a school, and I know how you manage. Basically, you don't do much, and you send them a letter saying, we're very sorry you feel this way. We've had a word, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. I'm like, it's basically very dismissive. So anyway, but she did talk to me, and she did really kind of confirm what I had learned about how the mind and how right now your brain is right now just trying to make sense of things. She says, "What are your symptoms?" And I said, "Absolute extreme fatigue." I mean, she goes, "Are you sleeping?" And I said, "Yeah, I am sleeping, but it doesn't seem to really matter now that the jet lag, the time difference between America and Britain has eased. My body's kind of caught up with that. I am sleeping through the night. The thing is, I could get 10 hours of sleep, and 4 hours later, I just want to go back to bed." And I said, today, the allotment is one place where I go to clear my head. I go for my animals. I love those animals. And today I can't even face it. And she says, that's a red flag because you would do anything for those animals, if I'm understanding you correctly. And she says, oh, yeah. I said, oh, yeah. Yeah. You try messing with my animals. You've got to get through me. And everybody knows it. Um, and she also, as I said, I just don't even have the energy to go kickboxing, stick fighting, or anything like that. Those are the things I was so passionate about. And now I'm like, I can't face it. And she said, that's Popper's tail. Those are red flags, but they are also completely normal because your brain and your mind are still trying to work through what's happened, and they're spending all that energy on that you don't have anything left. And work and I had to let a student go because I cannot be that nurturing person every minute for her. So she says, but everything you feel is completely understandable and completely normal. When it's going to end, we don't know. That's down to the individual. And then she says, is there anything else we can do for you? And I said, no, I know that you cannot prescribe something that's going to make this go away. And first of all, I'm not an antidepressant type person. Um, it would have to be almost legally mandated for me to take them before I would go down that route. She says, no. And she goes, and I don't think that is what you need right now. You recognize that. You recognize what you need. Um, you probably just need to talk to somebody and work through it. So that, yeah, yeah. But it was the physical symptoms that were really starting to bother me. And she's like, but that's completely normal. So, yeah. Um, After I got off the phone with her, I did feel a little bit better. My friend did go out and feed my birds for me today. She says, what kind of a support network do you have? Do you have family there? And I said, well, no, most of my family's gone, except for my brother, and he lives in America, and cousins and things like that. I do have friends. So I did have my friend go out and feed the birds. She says, that's good, good. You at least recognize that there's something wrong, but you also recognize that they have needs too. So you're making sure that they're looked after. Um, but I wasn't happy with still the response I got about the receptionist. So I phoned the practice again, and I just said, because I got an email back when I emailed in and just said, your practice needs a real attitude adjustment, and left a request that the manager's assistant calls me. And I thought, they're not going to call. She did. I was really impressed. And I told her what happened. And I just said, look, I wanted to run down there and confront them face to face and say, how dare you speak to somebody like that? Because I told her, I said, if I had been a bystander and I saw your receptionist speaking to somebody like that, and I had known the situation, I would have intervened and said, excuse me, no, that is not your job. How dare you diminish somebody in that much pain like that? And I said, I would have done it. And she said, I expected just a bunch of flack back from her. And I said, somebody in my situation doesn't need that. They need somebody to be understanding. And I said, look, I wasn't trying to jump the queue. and say, I want an appointment right now. You're going to give me one. I understand you're overworked. You don't have that. But I was trying to work with you and I still got attitude. And she was saying, I've done all I can for you. No, you're not. You've just given me all the attitude you can, is what you've done. Well, anyway, she said, no, I can't really say much, but I think that basically it could have been handled better. The receptionists are going to listen to the calls. We're going to look at what happened. And she did say that you should have been offered that call, at least that call back a lot earlier. And it just you shouldn't have had to call back and then go through 111. She should have said go through 111. And that would have been fine. I would have said, okay, all right, I get it. Because they hold back certain appointments for them. Anyway, that's the story of how I'm feeling today. I'm a little bit better today, or right now. I did have a couple of friends. I posted that on my Facebook page too. I was just so mad. I said, if you're ever thinking of going to, I'm going to say it, Estelle Medical Center in Kettering, don't. They're twats. This was before I had to talk with the GP. And a lot of my friends had come back and said, are you all right? Are you sick? And I'm like, I'm just sick of this sort of snowflake attitude that you can't get angry at people, that you can't, you know, express your dissatisfaction with people without just getting some kind of form letter response out of someone, and that's all you're going to get. No, I think we deserve better than that. I'm not saying you should go up and spit in their face and be horrible and stuff, but it's like, come on, you know? What if I would have gone down there? And one of the things I said was, what if I'd been an elderly person with really bad arthritis who couldn't operate a phone? Would that have been okay for her to speak to me like that? And she says, no, of course not. I said, so why am I any different? And she's like, you're not. No, that should not have been handled like that. So anyway, she says, I'm probably going to get a letter off them. We shall see. Um, but yeah, but I had another friend call me back, goes, I know a Chinese herbal therapist. And I was like, yeah, thank you. I don't know about that. I do know people have gone down that route, like the acupuncture therapy and things like that, and they've been helped by it. I don't know that I'm needy of that right now. I'm not saying it's hocus pocus or anything like that. Um, I just thought, maybe another time. We'll see. We'll see. I like to be open-minded about stuff, but then again, I also think I recognize what is going on a bit and what I need. Right, which is just maybe just to talk to a mental health practitioner. And I don't have a problem telling people that I am reaching out for mental health assistance. So, yeah, I think it's time to put things out there like that and take the stigma away from it, which I think has really happened quite a lot. Right, I really rambled on here on this video. I hope you like the background. And I really hope that if my experience sounds similar to yours, that maybe you feel like, some days you're going along okay, and then the next day you're kind of like, I don't want to even face the world and get out of bed and get out of my pajamas today. It's normal. It's really normal. Don't think you're going to work through the 5 stages of grief in order. You're going to probably, like I said, acceptance is the last one. Well, I accept it happened. What is that? It happened. But do I accept that it was right? No. Do I accept that this person that caused the accident walked away without any bodily harm to him? Well, I have to accept it because that's what happened. But do I like it? No. I think so would you have felt better if he died too? Yeah, I would have. I really would have. Would have taken him away from the whole equation, and because he was a drunk driver and he was driving under the influence, it would have possibly other things. He's not going to do it to anyone else. There you go. Um, yeah, but you just because you've accepted it doesn't mean you're all good now. It's gonna be an undulating wave, and some days I don't know if there is any order to it, like a time frame where maybe that wave just gets a little bit less. I don't know. We'll see. I suppose everybody's different. All right, I'm gonna stop now. Um, please do comment. Please do watch if you want to. I'm not doing this to get clicks and watches and likes, but hey, if it does happen and we go viral and that helps people, great, great. Okay, so I might be back tomorrow. We'll see. Tomorrow's plan is to get out to the allotment and just do what I can do. Um, and if I feel up to it, I'll do another video and report on that. And I'll try to get a little more techie. Okay, everybody, take care of yourselves and ciao.